Next week, let's go to the vacation home and have a barbecue.
When Dad said that, our family was thrilled. The vacation home is an hour-and-a-half drive away. I always enjoyed the drive there, and going to the vacation home was always something to look forward to. People might think we're rich when I mention the vacation home, but my parents bought it during the so-called bubble era. I don't know much about it, but apparently back then, it wasn't just the rich who bought vacation homes. It was common even among ordinary people. Dad, let's go fishing. Going fishing with Dad in the nearby river was a tradition when we went to the vacation home. Meanwhile, Mom and Melissa would play in the river or relax at the vacation home. This vacation home, which our family often visited, was filled with memories. I remember the time I drove my parents there as an adult. They were both moved. But then, Mom passed away from illness, and 3 years later, Dad followed her. They were a loving couple, so I think they must be living happily together in heaven. With that thought, I am riding my motorcycle to the vacation home after a long time. My name is Casey. I am a 30-year-old clerical worker. I love motorcycles, and since getting my license, I often go touring. It's definitely influenced by my father. People say it's a masculine hobby, but I like what I like. I'm enjoying my life now and not actively looking for a boyfriend or husband. I hope to find a good partner eventually, but I'm not actively looking right now. Melissa, who is 6 years older, got married before Mom passed away and is now a mother of 2. We used to be close, but I don't get along with Lucas, so we hardly see each other. Lucas, 3 years older than Melissa, started a business and he often belittles me for being just a clerical worker in a small company. So I avoid him as much as possible. If you start a business, you're the president, whether you have 1 employee or 100. President is president. Whether it's pride or something else, I often hear him say, "I am the president." Well, it doesn't matter to me. But then, something happened that I couldn't ignore. It was about 6 months before my father passed away. His chronic illness worsened and he was hospitalized. Living close to my parents' house, I often visited and watched over my father. I was estranged from Melissa and her husband at the time, but I felt it would be unfair to my father not to tell Melissa if something happened, so I told her the situation. The hospital was about a 30-minute drive from Melissa's house. I thought she would come to visit, but she never did, saying it was too hard to bring the 2 kids. I never heard from my father that Melissa had come, so she probably didn't. Lucas is head over heels for Melissa, and he has spoiled and flattered her since they were dating. And Melissa has come to think that's normal and her attitude towards others has changed. In a word, she's lost her compassion. When she got married, I think she stopped thinking of us as family. "My new family is my family," she declared. Probably she found our parents who would scold her for being selfish annoying. Living a life spoiled by Lucas, who would let her do anything, I didn't want to be involved with Melissa and her husband, and I have hardly been in touch with them since Melissa's wedding. Yet the moment I informed them of my father's death, Melissa and her husband started to cozy up to me. At the funeral, Melissa whispered in my ear, "Hey, how much is the inheritance?" What? Is this the place to talk about that? I couldn't believe my ears, but Melissa's eyes were serious. Lucas, sitting next to her, was looking at me too. "I'll sort it out later, so I don't know the details, but I don't think it's a significant amount." I had planned to pay for my father's hospital bills, but he insisted on using his savings, so we used what he had saved for the hospital expenses. Even after the funeral, I was busy greeting relatives and funeral home staff, but Melissa and her family were relaxing as if it were someone else's business. And as I passed by Melissa, she and her husband said, "Hey, can we go home now?" Sure enough, Melissa had changed. The old Melissa loved her father and would never have behaved this way at his funeral. She would have been sobbing, but this is how it is now. I became sad.
"Hey, we can't leave until we have settled the inheritance,"
Lucas said, laughing. I was angered by his words and raised my voice without thinking. "So we can't talk about the inheritance now? Please go home. Thank you for coming today." Those were not words to say to Melissa and her husband. I knew it, but I didn't want to think of them as family. The funeral ended and I slept for a night, but I was so sad about various things that I jumped on my motorcycle and ended up at the vacation home. What should I do with this vacation home? It's also part of the inheritance. I was troubled. Then Melissa called me. When I answered the phone, Melissa suddenly said something outrageous. Hey, Casey, re-announce the inheritance? What? So that's how it is? When I fell silent, Melissa started talking on her own. After all, Casey, you're single, so you don't need money, right? We have 2 children and we never have enough money. You wouldn't understand being single, but raising children costs a lot. Melissa started talking about her children whenever she could. During the New Year's celebration, she would show up at her parents' house where relatives gathered, saying it was troublesome to stay long with the children only to take gift cards and sweets and leave. It was clear that she was after the gift cards. At some point, she became greedy for money and I began to dislike Melissa. And it's the same now that my father has passed away. Without mourning or thinking about my father, all she talks about is the inheritance. I was disappointed in Melissa. Hey, are you listening? So renounce the inheritance. Even if you call it an inheritance, most of my father's savings were used for hospital bills. So it's just the house and the vacation home. Besides, before I could finish, Melissa cut me off. All the more reason. If Casey renounces it, it will help us. There is no use talking to her anymore. But what will you do with the family home and the vacation home? You won't live in them, Melissa. Will you go to the vacation home for fun? You know, my family home is in Atlanta and no one lives there anymore, so selling it could make some money. As for the vacation home, I wonder what to do with it. I really wish you wouldn't sell the vacation home. It's filled with family memories. Casey, always talking about family. That's why you're not married yet. I was irritated by those words, but I somehow held back and continued. But lately, vacation home seems to be in demand, so maybe it could sell for a high price? It even has hot springs, so there must be many people who want it. Really? So if we sell that vacation home, we'll be rich? I could picture Melissa's excited face. I thought for a moment and decided to renounce the inheritance, but with one condition. Hey, how about you prepare the memorial service, Melissa? And if you plan to sell the house, use that money for the preparation? A memorial service? Oh, well, okay. So you'll renounce the inheritance then? Melissa's voice brightened. I was hesitant, but as a single person, I rarely visit the vacation home. If so, it would be better for Melissa's family to use it, and if Melissa decided to sell it, I would be fine with others using that memorable vacation home. I paused before replying. Gladly. So I decided to renounce the inheritance and return to my usual life. A year passed since my father's death. Melissa, how's the memorial service preparation? Casey, why are you contacting me now? Why are you angry? You've been ignoring my calls, Casey. Huh? Misunderstanding? Oh, right. I changed my mobile number. I had changed my number since my father's funeral, wanting to cut ties with Melissa and her husband. Of course, I hadn't told Melissa, so she couldn't contact me. I just called to check on the progress of the memorial service. So, is the memorial service ready? Huh? There's no way I could do it. I have 2 kids to take care of. You're single and free, Casey. You do it. I sighed. You promised back then, didn't you? This isn't what we agreed on. That's my line. What? What do you mean? You said the vacation home would sell high, so I thought I'd sell it right away, but it's not selling at all. Instead, I'm being charged thousands of dollars for maintenance and repair fees, and even for using the hot springs. What's going on? Oh, that I found out about it later. That's awful. It's a scam. A scam. Why, Melissa? You're the one who wanted me to renounce the inheritance, right? I said it might sell high, but that was just an amateur opinion. I didn't know if it would actually sell, but the family home sold, right? Oh, well, yes, Melissa stammered. That means the family home must have sold for a decent amount. Then use that money for the vacation home expenses and keep it for family use. If I want to use it, can I pay a fee? Well, so Melissa, you really want to sell it? I asked Melissa the obvious question once more. How about renting out the vacation home then? You could set up tents in the yard for camping. Camping seems to be trendy, and you could keep the hot springs and turn the rest into a campground. Of course, I'm just an amateur, so maybe consult with a real estate agent? Melissa's voice brightened noticeably. That's an idea. I hadn't thought of that. By the way, I can arrange the memorial service if you will pay the cost as promised. If you don't pay, then transfer the rights to the vacation home to me. I don't really expect her to transfer the rights to me now, but I had to say it this way, or Melissa seemed likely to break her promise. Melissa, who thinks she found a use for the vacation home, obviously had no intention of giving it up. As expected, she nodded. Well, I guess so. The vacation home seems to be working out, so I'll cover the costs. Then I'll arrange it. Once the amount is settled, transfer the money to my account first. Understood. The memorial service went smoothly. Of course, I made sure to get the money in advance so there was no loss. After the memorial service, Melissa said, I'm glad Dad left us the vacation home. Our dreams are expanding. Lucas chimed in,
Our future is secure now. I'm grateful to father-in-law.
He never showed any gratitude before, but he says it now. I didn't want to be involved anymore, so I handled the conversation formally and left quickly. 3 months later, my mobile phone rang. Casey, you lied again. What now? What's the problem? The vacation home. Melissa was furious and kept talking. You said to rent it out, but no one wants it. And when I asked about turning it into a campground, they said tents are prohibited on that land. Now I'm just losing money. What are you going to do about it?
Wow, that's tough. I didn't know that.
I listened to Melissa's anger and nodded. It's not just tough, it's your fault, Casey.
Why is it my fault? You were the one who got greedy and wanted to renounce the inheritance. If we had properly divided inheritance, I would have researched and considered selling or managing it, but it's yours, Melissa, so it's not my place to interfere. Since Melissa kept ranting about fraud and demanding I do something, I interrupted her. Besides, you have the money from selling the family home, right? It's not fair to take what you want and push off what's a burden.
That money's long gone.
What?
I couldn't help but let out a stunned voice. Lucas failed in his business. Now we are in debt.
The company of a man who always boasted about being a CEO and having business acumen went bankrupt? I couldn't help but laugh.
That's really tough. I said the words, but I couldn't stop laughing. Hey, what are you laughing at? We have 2 kids, you know.
Both of your kids are already in middle school, right? The older one is about to be a high school student. High school students can work part-time. And if the family pulls together, you can quickly handle that amount of debt. Well, if Melissa and Lucas can humble themselves and ask for help, that is.
What? Casey, you're single. You can't understand what it's like to have a family.
Sure. That was true until recently.
What?
Oh, I got married. My partner is a business trader.
A business trader? Casey, where did you find such a wealthy person?
Well, I think he earns more than our peers. He's a fellow motorcycle enthusiast. Melissa, you always told me to stop riding or I would miss my chance to marry, but I got married safely. I'll be a mother next year.
What?
So, just like Melissa, I'll be focusing on my new family. Please don't contact me anymore. Bye. I cheerfully hung up on the phone. I met my husband shortly after my father's death, and we hit it off right away. I think my worried father might have guided me to my husband. After my father's memorial service, my husband and I had a small wedding, and I soon discovered I was pregnant. I couldn't show my parents my wedding dress or their grandchild's face, but I'm sure they're watching from heaven. Dad, Mom, I'm very happy now.